On this Friday night, Russia's heinous attack on a busy Ukrainian train station.
They hit people with missiles.
The carnage, the Kremlin's denials, and new video revealing the remnants of an obliterated town. Pushing back against Russian propaganda, the war against disinformation during the war in Ukraine. Budget impact, reality checking Ottawa's affordable housing strategy.
We need a little bit more room.
Plus the new incentives for oil giants to get greener, faster, and batter up. Something to cheer about on the Diamond and beyond.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Colleen Christie.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Russia is being accused of committing yet another horrific war crime, this time at a railway station in eastern Ukraine, where thousands of people were waiting to evacuate the increasingly volatile region. And a warning, our coverage includes some disturbing images. The scene of horror unfolded this morning as civilians were waiting to flee the city of Kramatorsk in the contested Donetsk region. No Ukrainian troops were said to be at the station when the two rockets hit. At least 50 people were killed, including several children. World leaders have condemned the attack, but the Kremlin is denying any involvement, going so far as to blame Ukraine for the terror caused on the ground. It comes as a top EU official landed in Kyiv today with a pledge to try to speed up Ukraine's bid to become a member of the bloc. Crystal Goomansingh begins our coverage tonight.
A grisly scene in Ukraine captured by witnesses. Screams and panic have become familiar, but this was something much worse. There were many killed and injured here. It was hell on earth. Bodies covered the pavement. Some died instantly. Others suffered wounds that will change their lives forever. This is the kind of shrapnel pieces scattered, says this Kramatorsk city official. People were injured by these pieces. That's what killed them. The railway station in the Donetsk Oblast was packed when it was hit by a missile around 10:30 Friday morning. An estimated 4,000 people were in the area. Ukrainians in the region had been instructed to get out by any means necessary before the fighting intensified. Photos from the scene showed bodies covered with tarps and the remnants of a rocket with the words, "For the children," painted on it in Russian. Russia denies the attack, as it has many others, claiming Ukraine fired on its own people. People were waiting for a train to get to safe territory, the Ukrainian president told Finland's parliament. In Bucha, investigators are painstakingly unearthing unmarked graves as they work to identify the victims. It's alleged Russian forces who occupied the area just outside of the capital for weeks murdered civilians and then buried them before retreating. Ursula von der Leyen is the first Western politician to visit the city and the site. It left her shaken.
The unthinkable has happened here. We have seen the cruel face of Putin's army. We saw our humanity being shattered.
Von der Leyen and Zelensky discussed moving up Ukraine's EU membership bid when they met in Kyiv, potentially advancing that timeline from years to weeks. Von der Leyen says she believes in Ukraine marching towards a European future, while sanctions erode Russia as we know it. Colleen?
Crystal Goomansingh. Crystal, thank you. We are learning more tonight about another Kyiv suburb that was occupied by Russian forces for several weeks. Now, as Ukrainians are making their way back to Borodyanka, officials are warning the situation is even more dreadful than what occurred in Bucha. Mike Armstrong takes us through what's left of the town.
It is a town like so many others, like too many others, reduced in parts to rubble. Borodyanka had a population before the war of about 13,000. That's the size of Summerside, PEI, Port Hope, Ontario, Canmore, Alberta, or Aldergrove, BC. Now, what all of those places share with this one is this: Main Street. Just flying over it doesn't let you appreciate how everything that was here was like what most of us know wherever we live. So, Starting out at the traffic circle, there's a restaurant on the right. Sasha's Place has a Facebook page. You can see their courtyard, their food, and their staff. Behind Sasha's, there was a building supplies store. There were some great reviews online. The owner, Natalka, could get you anything, and you'd apparently be pleasantly surprised by the prices. Further up, there was a small gourmet grocery store, the sort of place you might go if you needed a special ingredient. On the left side, there was a hardware store, part of a chain, judging from the pictures, the sort of place my brother would like. Moving on, there was a beer store on the right, a place called Bar Boss, directly across from a health clinic, by the way. Hobart Medical, with all the specialists you might need. If you were looking for a cell phone, that was a bit further up. Kyivstar seems to have had a decent selection. There was also a good selection at the butcher shop across the street. A block from there, another hardware store, this one with an interesting name, Mario's Hardware. Yes, that Mario. There was another beer store, but this one a little different. You could buy draft from the tap. The local tax office was just up the street, and then a sports store, a very crowded and colorful sports store, which brings us to the town square. It's another thing most communities have, and in the case of Borodyanka, in the middle, there was a statue, Ukrainian poet and artist Taras Shevchenko. This is what that square looks like today, and how that statue was left, with a bullet hole in the head and looking down, almost as though trying not to see what happened here. According to Ukrainian officials, Russian troops killed 300 people in Borodyanka, 50 of them executed. Mike Armstrong, Global News.
Ukraine is one of the world's biggest bread baskets, and new data shows the hefty toll the fighting is already having on food prices. The UN says world food prices hit an all-time high in March, soaring nearly 13% above February's record high. The price for cereals, including wheat and other coarse grains, is up 17%. The UN says food prices were already at a 10-year high before the war. In this country, some good news. More people are finding work. National unemployment hit a record low last month. Canada's economy added 73,000 jobs in March, mostly in Ontario and Quebec, pushing the unemployment rate down to 5.3%. That's the lowest rate since Statistics Canada started tracking the data in 1976, and it's the first time it's fallen to its pre-pandemic level. Average hourly wages are also up slightly, 3.4% on a year-over-year basis. Employed or not, many Canadians are still struggling to keep up with soaring rents and real estate prices. The Trudeau government is targeting housing affordability as a key priority in its budget. But experts wonder if Ottawa can turn the plans into reality. David Akin reports.
Living in a downtown apartment has been great for Liz Rashid-Hagi, but now, with baby Gwen quickly growing, it's time to move on up.
We have our dog and my husband and I and our baby, and there's a lot of stuff to house, so we need a little bit more room.
The barrier to that move, though, a fiercely competitive market with sky-high prices.
People are just coming in, and it seems like pulling numbers out of thin air, and we're not getting much of an opportunity to offer within our price range.
Families like Liz's are precisely the kind that the Trudeau government had in mind when it unveiled a raft of new programs in the budget to make housing more affordable.
In a country like Canada, we should be able to make sure that people who work hard, who want to start a family in communities they love, should be able to find a home.
Most experts admire the ambition in the budget, but the money to match that ambition may not be there.
The promise to double the number of houses completed over the next decade is a very ambitious target. I don't think there's enough policy here to make that a reality, that the spending towards that is relatively modest.
The budget also promised a home buyer's bill of rights. It would, for example, outlaw the practice of blind bidding, where competing prospective buyers are not told about the value of other bids. And, as promised in their election platform, Liberals will ban foreign investment in residential real estate for 2 years. But that may only have a limited effect.
A lot of the speculation is domestic in nature, and this really doesn't touch it.
In any event, Liz Rashid-Hagi and her family cannot wait for new federal programs to have an impact, so she's house hunting in communities 60, 70, 80 kilometers from work.
We've had no choice but to look as far as Armstrong and Perth and Smiths Falls. places that are, an hour outside the city, and then is the price savings enough to offset the price of gas right now? We can't win.
David Akin, Global News, Ottawa.
Keeping costs down for Canadians will be another major challenge for Ottawa as it attempts to curb the climate crisis. Eric Sorensen reports on the task of growing the economy while protecting the environment.
It's been a head-spinning week for this country's balancing act as a climate-protecting, oil-producing nation. There were new federal investments to make GM a major electric vehicle manufacturer. Then approval of Bay du Nord off Newfoundland and Labrador that'll bring some 300 million more barrels of oil into the world. Capped off by a federal budget furiously trying to lead this country from old energy to new.
Investir de manière urgente.
Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland laid out urgent new investments. Zero-emissions vehicles, a novelty not long ago, may well be the next car or truck you buy. By 2030, manufacturers must sell mostly zero-emissions vehicles. Car buyers have a $5,000 incentive for another 3 years, and companies will soon get inducements to switch their truck fleets to zero emissions.
Accelerating electric vehicle adoption is a clear win-win for Canada. It's an area where we're going to be able to reduce emissions dramatically and set up create new jobs and economic growth.
But Ottawa did not abandon oil and gas. Many oil giants have banded together to develop carbon capture and storage in Western Canada. And now Ottawa is offering $2.5 billion in tax credits to ramp up investments quickly.
The 6 big oil sands companies came together and we said, we can't do it alone. And yesterday's budget with the investment tax credit, clearly a key step in getting us to where we need to go.
Critics say capturing carbon doesn't discourage burning more fossil fuels.
If we want to secure our future, that begins first and foremost by tackling those direct emissions from fossil fuels, energy and industry.
The federal budget shows the challenge for Ottawa to reduce emissions without pulling the rug from under the oil and gas sector.
It shows that the government can balance multiple objectives, not only to decarbonize, which is critical, but also to maintain economic growth.
And as Ottawa invests in e-vehicles while simultaneously supporting oil production, it can expect ongoing criticism from all sides. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Courting high hopes. Coming up, the significance of Ketanji Brown Jackson's appointment to the U.S. Supreme Court and the punishment Will Smith just got slapped with for that smack heard around the world. It was a day of celebration and reflection in Washington, where the U.S. has just marked an historic first. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson has been confirmed to that country's Supreme Court, becoming the first black woman to serve as justice. As Jackson Prosco reports, it's hoped she'll bring a new perspective to the highest court in the U.S.
The gravity of this moment clearly weighed on America's newest Supreme Court justice.
I am the dream and the hope of the slave.
As Ketanji Brown Jackson was welcomed at the White House, she entered the history books, blazing a trail on the highest court in the U.S.
In my family, it took just one generation to go from segregation to the Supreme Court of the United States.
Jackson's nomination and confirmation fulfill a long-standing promise from President Joe Biden, who vowed to appoint the first black woman to the court, righting a historic lack of representation.
We're going to look back and see this as a moment of real change in American history.
And this nomination is confirmed.
Her confirmation was overseen by the first black woman to serve as vice president. She secured a slim bipartisan majority in the Senate Thursday. As Democrats applauded, most Republicans filed out of the room in silence. They spent weeks protesting her candidacy.
It's not a matter of her being a black woman. That's extra. If she were a white woman or a white male, she would still be highly qualified.
For the court, this may be the most transformative moment since Thurgood Marshall became the first black justice in 1967, adding perspective not simply because of her race and gender, but because of her experience.
Judge Jackson was also a former public defender, which means she knows what it is like to represent the little person.
Her arrival won't change the balance of power on the conservative-leaning court. When she officially joins the bench this summer, she will face some of the most important cases in a generation: abortion rights, voting rights, and environmental protections. Judge Jackson has not only earned her place in American history, she will now help chart it. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
Will Smith has been banned from attending the Oscars for 10 years. The decision was made today by the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences. It comes nearly 2 weeks after Smith walked on stage and slapped Chris Rock after Rock made a joke about Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith. Smith went on to win the Oscar for Best Actor. He'll be allowed to keep that award. Smith says he understands and respects the ban. David and Goliath in the digital age. Ahead, one man's crusade to fight disinformation on social media.
You're watching Global National.
Russian President Vladimir Putin's first weapon in the war against Ukraine was the spread of propaganda amplified by state media outlets online. For the new reality this week, our Jeff Semple is reporting on the crusade to crack down on hate and disinformation swirling on social media. Jeff?
In the background of the war raging in Ukraine is another battle against online disinformation, and Washington, D.C. is on the front lines of that fight.
We came here to meet Imran Ahmed, who leads the Center for Countering Digital Hate. The nonprofit campaigns for governments and big tech firms to crack down on hate speech and disinformation. And lately, they've had their hands full.
Putin has invaded a sovereign country, and the first weapons he used in that war against Ukraine were not missiles or tanks. It was disinformation and lies spread through propaganda on social media.
Including this one from Russian state media on Facebook, falsely claiming the U.S. is funding secret bioweapons labs in Ukraine. Ahmed's team examined 1,300 Facebook posts from Russian state media and found the social media giant had failed to label 91% of the posts as Russian propaganda.
Our mission.
A spokesperson for Facebook's parent company called Ahmed's findings wildly inaccurate, noting the examples represent just a fraction of all posts about Russia and Ukraine.
Facebook for years have been saying that they're going to label content from propaganda channels. There's a big gap between what the platforms say and they do.
And those seeking to sow hatred and misinformation now have a new platform.
Yeah, that little 12-year-old.
Ahmed's team recently went undercover in virtual reality.
Fake dragons, that's you?
This third-party Facebook app where users interact in a virtual world. His team witnessed verbal abuse, from racism to sexual assault, occurring on average every 7 minutes.
They're going to have to put in a lot of work to get this as somewhere where parents would feel safe leaving their kids, because right now, you don't want Mark Zuckerberg babysitting your kids.
A spokesperson for Meta told Global News they're rolling out new safety measures, including new parental supervision tools to prevent children from unlocking adult content. Jeff Semple, Global News, Washington.
You can watch Jeff's full report on the fight against disinformation tomorrow night at 8 on The New Reality right here on Global. Coming up, the Blue Jays are back, but baseball isn't the only pro sport creating excitement in Canada's biggest city.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Stop. Go Falcon, go Dragon. Godspeed, Axiom 1.
And with that, the first all-private crew of astronauts is on its way to the International Space Station. The SpaceX Crew Dragon is expected to reach the ISS tomorrow and spend 8 days on board. This is the first mission for Axiom, a U.S. company that hopes to build a commercial space station. Well, there's nothing quite like baseball's home opener in Toronto. All the excitement as fans watch the Blue Jays get back into the swing of the season, especially now that COVID restrictions have been lifted. But as Mike Drolet explains, it's the energy being felt on the field, the ice, and the court that has sports fans in Canada's biggest city buzzing.
There's an odd feeling in Toronto right now. Call it optimism, at least when it comes to sports. The Blue Jays are expected to be good. So good, in fact, that when the oddity that makes Bo Bichette's bobblehead unique was unveiled,
it actually has real hair.
Nobody asked whose hair. It certainly didn't come from Bo's flowing locks, which looked dazzling as ever as he spoke about the overwhelming opinion within baseball that the Jays will make a run at the World Series.
I think we've expected a lot more out of ourselves than any of you guys have in the past. So for us, I mean, I think it's more of it's kind of about time.
This is the first home opener in Toronto in 3 years because of COVID. Close to 50,000 fans are expected. With the sixth wave and no masking requirements, there may be nerves off the field too. The Jays players themselves can only control what's happening between the lines. And to a man, they're thankful to only have one home field this year, after splitting 2021 between Dunedin, Florida, Buffalo, and Toronto.
It's not the actual home ballpark. It's being able to wake up in your own condo and make breakfast by yourself, make your own coffee, go take a shirt out of your closet instead of your suitcase on the floor, just for once.
All the excitement around opening day doesn't erase how difficult these last 2 years have been. COVID hasn't provided many laughs. However, Toronto sports fans may get a chuckle out of this, because unvaccinated players on U.S.-based teams will continue to be turned away at the border until restrictions are eased. If it's a star player for the Red Sox or Yankees, that's a huge advantage for the Blue Jays.
It's not the Blue Jays pulling a fast one on anybody. They have just been fully vaccinated and are able to travel freely.
Perhaps 2022 is the year Toronto teams put it all together. The Raptors are playing better than anyone expected. Austin Matthews just set a Maple Leafs record for goals in a season, and the boys of summer are back. It must finally be spring. Mike Drolet, Global News Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Friday night. I'm Colleen Christie. We leave you tonight in Toronto with a sneak peek of the warm-up inside Rogers Centre. Thanks for watching. Sophie Louis will be at the anchor desk tomorrow. Let's go Jays!